Okay. Just for the sake of it, I have to ask if you consent to being recorded and consent to
Yeah,
participate in an interview.
Okay.
Okay. And the interview will be recorded to ease data processing, ensure the highest accuracy in the process. The data gathered from this interview will be used in the report, and your identity will be strictly confidential. Okay. So I'd like to begin by discussing the collectible car market and getting to know you. My research objective is to determine the criteria by which to evaluate a car to determine if it will be a lucrative investment. My research encompasses both classic and modern collectible vehicles, thus the questions below are related to the entire body of collectible cars. Okay, section 1. How long have you been involved in the collectible car space or industry?
Probably about 20 years.
Okay. Has your involvement in the industry been in a personal or professional capacity? Please elaborate.
So in the past, I'd say professional capacity probably since 2016.
Okay.
And as a side hustle probably from 2001 till about 2016 when I decided to make it
A full-time.
a full-time job. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Has your focus been primarily on collectible vehicles that are considered as the classics, so obviously the older stuff, or does it extend to modern collectible vehicles as well?
It definitely extends to the modern classic, what we call modern classics as well.
Okay.
So we sort of specialize in 1970 upwards till about the year 2000, which we consider classic.
Okay, till 2000, extending beyond 2000.
And then extending beyond 2000, which we consider modern classic.
Okay, but still collectible.
So yeah, still collectible. Yeah.
Okay, so you'd say that yours from 1970 all the way up to say like 2010, even beyond that, just depending on
Even
the car.
beyond that, depending on the rarity of the car, and there's certain criteria that would make a car collectible.
Okay. Because now so then obviously we've answered this question. Do you believe that there are vehicles built after 2000 that are collectible?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. So now I'm going to go into collectible cars as investments. Do you believe that the collectible vehicle space in South Africa is growing, and how does it compare to the international market?
It's definitely growing. COVID and these things have had an impact on the market, but it is still there, and it is still growing steadily. The thing with modern classics and classic cars, it's like the stock market. It can go up and go down.
Yeah.
Depending on the supply and demand. So, but it's very much alive and thriving in South Africa for sure.
Okay. Are collectible vehicles a viable investment for investors?
Most definitely. I mean, the returns that one could get on a classic car over the past 10 years were higher than any other investment you could make. So the return on investment is very good if you manage to find a car at the right price. The right car at the right price.
And that all also depends on the criteria as well.
Yes.
Okay. What advantages or disadvantages does investing in collectible vehicles have when compared to safer investments such as shares, property, precious metals?
So, especially in South Africa, where our political stance is quite volatile at the moment, many people are leaving the country, many people are immigrating and stuff like that. It's quite a good prospect for people who've invested in classic cars. It's quite easy for them to put the cars in a container and ship it out the country. And the prospect of making even more profit on the car, come time to sell in that country that they decide to immigrate to, their return on investment is much higher than even if they sold it here. So it's definitely a very viable option.
So do you think across the board, in terms of collectible cars, the prices are higher overseas compared to South Africa?
Most definitely, and that's mostly related to our weaker rand.
Yeah.
So, naturally, because of our weaker rand, locals aren't able to pay the prices that overseas clients are able to pay. So you'll definitely notice a trend that cars are more valuable overseas than they are here. So there's been a lot of people who have actually, in fact, there's been businesses created around this where people just specialize in exporting our sports and classic cars from South Africa out to other countries.
Okay, that's cool. And is investing in collectible vehicles relatively low risk?
Yeah, it is.
Obviously,
You know,
in
even though
comparison
even though the market fluctuates a bit, you'll never lose money. I've never met someone who's bought a classic car and had to take a loss on it.
is that classic and collectible or only
Classic and collectible.
and collectible? Okay.
Obviously, dependent on the vehicle,
Yeah.
but most people have over time have had positive returns.
Okay.
Whereas, you know, other investments where if it's like the share, you know, stock market and stuff like that, if shares go down, you lose money.
Yeah.
Whereas in the classic car market, it's very difficult to lose money. You either break even or you make a profit.
So would you say that the market in the collectible car industry is quite stable?
Yes.
It's like across
Yeah,
the board quite
correct.
stable.
Yeah, it is.
And on par with the international market in the stability.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So how do the prices of collectible vehicles in South Africa compare to the prices in the international market? Can we discuss that?
Yeah, because some guys who are experienced in the market know the value of their cars, and when they try and sell them, they try and aim for international values. But most of the time, they're having to settle for a bit less
Yeah.
than the
And
international.
that's South Africa specifically.
Yeah. Foreign buyers are happy to buy from South Africa
Okay.
because what we consider, you know, sort of top dollar for them is average pricing
Because of rand.
because of the poor rand.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, and also the other thing that influences positivity for them when they're buying these cars is most of our cars are corrosion free.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Where unless it comes from the coastline,
Yeah.
but cars, all the inland cars are corrosion free. Whereas overseas, that's something that's unheard of. To find a classic car that's got no corrosion is very difficult. So the recon process is much less. So a guy knows he can buy a car in South Africa and take it overseas and not have to restore it.
Yeah. Which
And
saves him a lot.
it saves him a lot of money. So in turn, he's happy to pay a higher price
Yeah.
for a South African car
Okay.
because of that.
So is it common practice that cars are being exported from South Africa to
It's
buyers?
happening monthly.
Is it even cars like post 2000 that are more
Yeah,
the
that
modern
are going,
collectible?
Yeah, they're going
So across the board, all
across the board. If it's a collectible car, just like we're looking for it, they're looking for it.
and they're willing to pay.
They're willing to pay. Yeah.
Okay. And then a lot of people get turned away from collectible cars and classic cars if they're not particularly car people because of the insurance and maintenance costs.
Mhm.
How significant are they in the context of owning a collectible car?
Yeah, look, a collectible car generally has a very low market value, but that market is, you know, it's a different market. It's a normal car value. So if you had to take a normal car that was 20 years old and look at the value, it would show a very low amount. But
Can
a
you
classic
just give me
car.
an example of that?
So an example is a BMW E36 M3, for
Okay,
example.
yeah.
It's a 19. They were produced from 92 up until 96. And if you go and check the current market value on it,
Like the book
the
value.
book value,
Okay, yeah.
it's probably somewhere in the 70 or 80,000 range. Whereas the true value, the collectible value on the car, which we like to call it, the collectible value is probably in the 400 to 500,000 range.
Okay.
So in order for you to get it insured for that value, you need to have a proper classic car evaluator do a proper appraisal and evaluation on the car, and then submit that to your insurance.
Okay.
And then what they would do is they would allow you to insure the car on an agreed value basis.
Okay.
So the insurance company and the client will agree that the value of the vehicle is 400 or 500,000, or the client will show the invoice for purchasing the vehicle for collectible value of 400 or 500,000 rand, and that's how they insure classic cars. But it is challenging at times.
The insurance part of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Is that just because there's not enough insurance houses in South Africa to accommodate such things
Yes,
compared
there
to
aren't.
overseas?
Insurance companies are, you know, they look at their return should the client falter.
Mm.
And if they're going to put a classic car up on auction or a collectible car up on auction, they may not get the full return that they've loaned to the client.
Mm.
So they're a little bit, they're always apprehensive. But you do get some, you know, there's a handful of insurance companies that are now, you know, focusing their attention on collectible cars as well.
Would you say that's more in the last 5 to 10 years that they've extended
Yes,
to this, just
definitely.
because of the growth?
Not
in
even
the
10
market?
years. I'd say in the last 5 years, maybe.
Just because of the growth in the
Yeah,
in
just
the
because
market.
of the definitely.
Okay. And now a lot of people say that in collectible investments, as opposed to like properties and shares and things like that, there's also emotional return, which is a big part of why people buy it. What do you think about the
Yeah,
emotional
most
return?
definitely. I mean, you can have R1 million in the bank, and the only enjoyment you get out of it is looking at your bank balance or your bank statement. Whereas, if you got R1 million car in the garage, you can drive it, you can polish it, you can enjoy it, you can repair it, you can restore it, you can take it out on a Sunday afternoon and go for a drive with it. So there's, it's the enjoyment is twofold, because you're going to enjoy the actual car, and you're going to enjoy the appreciation of that car. So people are happy to keep their money in classic cars, because the longer they keep it, the more the car appreciates, and they can enjoy it physically.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just left your money in the bank, yes, you'd get a return on interest, which is lower than the return on the appreciation of the car, and there's no physical enjoyment in it.
So you'd say that the emotional plus
Yeah.
the financial return outweighs any insurance, maintenance cost, risk, all
Definitely,
the disadvantages of it.
yeah, definitely.
Okay. And then in terms of modern collectible vehicles, so that's stuff more past 2000 or so.
Correct.
Do you think similar criteria is used to evaluate both classic and modern collectible cars? Speaking in a broad sense.
Yeah, definitely similar criteria.
Okay.
Because essentially it's the same thing. The one is just a bit newer than the other.
Okay.
So, but very similar criteria. Because inevitably that modern classic will become a classic.
Yeah.
So it's essentially the same thing.
Okay.
Some people, you got to have a bit of foresight sometimes, because it's still a fairly newish car.
Yeah.
So you got to try and have the foresight to see that this vehicle is going to become a classic, a proper classic. So yeah.
Okay, so this is the last section, and it's discussing the criteria to evaluate a car. So even like a car that kind of came out this year, just by looking at it, or even like a car that's 2005 or something like that, just by looking and going through a criteria list, be able to see if it will be a good investment. So I've got 13 criteria, and I want to rate them on a scale of 1 to 7. Obviously 7 will be the most important, and 1 will be the least important.
Okay.
So must I just read all 13 out first, and then we can go and grade each one.
Okay.
So mileage, historical significance, drivetrain configuration, so that would be like like 4-wheel drive, exactly. Engine, V8, V12, whatever it may be. Paint condition, that would be original paint or resprayed. Interior condition, same. Maintenance history, number of previous owners, famous or significant previous owners. Sometimes when it's like owned by a celebrity or something. Location, vehicle spent most of its life. Originality, modifications with period correct parts, and commonality. So, what do I put for commonality? Are similar vehicles appreciating in value? So, like overthinking.
So there's in your criteria there's a very important, and probably the most important criteria missing from your list. And that is the rarity and the production cycle of the car.
Production numbers. How could I forget that?
So if a car is very rare, or if it's a limited production number car, it is guaranteed that vehicle will be collectible at some point.
So on a rating scale, you'd say that's 7, the highest possible.
7, that's it. The moment the car is a limited production car,
Yeah.
if it's a numbered car, so that means if it comes with a plaque inside,
Okay, yes.
saying that this is 1 of 50, they're only making 50 of them.
Yeah.
Guaranteed that
100%.
car is going to be a collectible car.
Okay.
So that's a very important criteria. The others will follow suit.
Do you want to have a look at them?
Yeah, let's see. Okay, so let's go to mileage. Is important, but not. I wouldn't say it's the be all and end all of everything. So
you say if a car is clean but the mileage is high, it's not really
it's not really. I would say that would be like a 3.
Okay.
Historical significance, if it's a special homologation vehicle, or if it's got racing history, or anything in that line, that would really
So that one was also encompassing, like, you know, I can't remember which car it was, but like the first car that came out with air suspension, or
Right.
the first car to use hydraulic steering, or the first car to, you know, the firsts of things. It also cars that homologation and cars that were special, like, for example.
Yeah, if it was, I wouldn't say really the first, like for example, a car with hydraulic steering, or whatever the case is, that's not really. But if it was the first, for example, the Porsche GT3,
Yeah.
if it was the first ever GT3
Okay.
manufactured by Porsche.
Yeah.
So, for example, the
car number
996
one or the
GT3.
first generation?
No, the first generation.
First generation.
If it was the first generation of GT3s to ever be produced
Yeah.
by a manufacturer, then it will hold significant value. So historical significance does go probably high up. I'll make that a 5. Drivetrain configuration. Generally, these cars, they only come in one drivetrain configuration. They only come in either rear-wheel drive, either four-wheel drive, either.
Yeah.
So it's not like you get to choose.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are cars. For example, rear-wheel drive collectible cars are always more valuable than a front-wheel drive.
Across the board, it's just
Across the board,
generally-
it's just people like rear-wheel drives
Okay.
more. So I'd say that's about 4. Engine is very important. I mean, you get different models of cars, and some cars, if it doesn't have that specific racing bred homologation special engine,
Yeah.
for example, you get a normal 325i,
Yeah.
and then you get the 325IS.
And we've seen those.
We've seen
Yeah.
the one is worth 150 grand, and the
Yeah.
other one is worth 1.5 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
So engine is very important. I'll put that up as a 5 as well. Paint condition, because it's an old car, paint, if it's got original paint, it definitely helps.
So is that if it's got original paint, even if the paint is not perfect, but it's original paint?
Yes.
Then it's better.
That
than,
will, yeah, so that will influence your, I'll make that a 3. Interior condition also, if it's similar, I'll also give that sort of a 3. Maintenance history is quite important. Also, I'd say 3 or 4. Number of previous owners doesn't really matter. Let's say 3 as well. Famous previous owners, that's quite a big one. Let's go to 6 there. You'll
Is that
see,
that important then?
yeah, you'll see a car that's owned by Paul Walker, for example, just because it was owned by him,
Yeah.
or Elvis Presley, for example,
Double
more than double. The car will be worth 10 times its normal value, just because it was owned by a certain person. Nelson Mandela's 7 Series BMW was also a hell of a lot more valuable than a normal 7 Series, just because it was owned by him.
Yeah.
So that's pretty high. That rates very, very high up. If it's been owned by a celebrity or an important person, or whatever the case is, or someone that's made history,
Yeah.
their vehicles do carry a much higher price tag. Location where vehicles spend most of its life, also quite important. Obviously, because of the corrosion
That's
thing we
what I
spoke about.
The
So
coastal.
I'll put that up at a 5.
inland.
That's quite important. If the car spent most of its life along the coast and it's rusted up and stuff like that, it obviously doesn't have the value. But a car that's well kept will always be worth more.
So location, I was referring to also like areas in inland or coastal, and then also garage kept, or was it outdoor, was it sitting outside, things
Yes,
like that.
definitely. But that, I suppose you would, but when you're inspecting the car, you'd be able to see telltale signs of a car that's well kept or not.
Yeah.
And that definitely does have a impact on the value. Originality also, I'd say put that up at a 5.
Is it as close to the day left factory?
Yes. Modifications of period correct parts.
So that I was like going towards say you get a 911 Targa at G series or at 930 or something, and they changed it from the Fushis to the teledial wheels.
Most purists, I mean, if there's an absolute purist looking for a car for his collection, and if he's looking for a specific car and it must be original, then if the car's modified, it would affect his decision.
Even with
in
period.
buying.
Correct.
Yeah, but some people, and this is a huge market as well, where you have these what they call resto mods. People taking old cars, they love the old classic cars, but they're putting new engines in, newer wheels, newer upgrades and stuff to modernize the car to a point where they can actually compare it to a modern car.
And use it like
a normal modern car, like the Singers and all that. They've got upgraded stuff. The shell of the car is new. Everything is new in the car, but the whole theme of the car is still classic.
Yeah.
So that's quite okay. I'll put that up at let's say 4. Commonality. I mean, what commonality and production numbers, is that similar to?
So no, commonality is are cars that are similar appreciating. So if you look at like a E46 M3, is that appreciating when you're looking at the E36 M3?
Yes, it is.
So it's more like just
They seem to follow. They seem to follow suit.
Yeah, are similar cars.
If E36 M3 seems to be doing well in the classic market, its bigger brother will most likely follow suit.
Okay, yeah. So that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That is the trend.
However, there are some criteria that may not, like, there's certain things like the E46 M3 was the last of the normally aspirated E46 M3s.
E90.
I mean, the one of the last of them.
Yeah,
So the E46 and E92. After that, I don't think those newer M3s and M4s will be as collectible.
And that comes back to the engine.
Correct. But then in the modern space, where cars are going electric or fully hybrid or whatever the case is, then the F80 M3s and that have their own special place, the turbocharged era.
Yeah.
So only time will tell. Right now they're sort of hovering at a certain value, but none of them are climbing.
Yeah.
But definitely E46 M3s, E92 M3s, all the 2000 sub 2010 cars.
But also again, I think it comes down to like the F80 compared to the E92. They made a lot more of the F80s.
Yes.
So that's production numbers.
Everything, yeah.
Again.
So commonality, yeah, definitely. I'd say also about a 4 there. I think that's. I think that's my ratings for
that's right.
everything there.
And then I want to so that's the ratings you've given. What would be the ideal situation for those criteria? If you look at a car, what would be,
So if the car is, first of all, if it's a homologation or racing special,
okay, so that's
so homologation, you know what it means. It means that the manufacturer had to make a certain amount of production vehicles in order for it to qualify for a race series.
Yeah.
And then those numbers are generally low. They had to make 200 or
Yeah.
100 or whatever. So those cars always hold a very high value.
Okay.
Then, so that's the homologation is very important.
And then homologation ties into production numbers.
Correct. So sometimes they manufacture a car not for racing purposes, but they make it a limited production number. Still will be very high and very good, very strong value. Anything that's rare, anything that you can't find is valuable. Like not only cars, I mean, it goes for anything else. But anything that you can't find. So if it's a car that even though it may not have been very limited production numbers for its time, but because there's so little of them left,
that's everyone wants
it automatically becomes a limited, or not, I wouldn't say a limited number car, but it automatically becomes a very attractive investment, because it's supply and demand at the end of the day. If there's very little in supply, the demand goes right. There are cars in this world that there's only one-offs, two-offs, or whatever the case is, and those cars are priceless. Literally priceless. Even though it may not have been such a special car when it came out, it's become a special car.
Okay. And then, so if you just go down the criteria, just tell me what would be your ideal situations when you've done production numbers. Mileage?
Yeah, mileage always has an impact, especially if the mileage is backed up by a good maintenance history.
So we can just do those two.
Yeah. A good maintenance history, if it's got a very good maintenance history, it really affects the value. There are cars where, some characters will turn the mileage back and turn the clocks back and stuff like that. But if it doesn't have any supporting documents to support the mileage, like a good service history, then the mileage could very well be anything. So the two go together. If it's got low mileage, it must have a solid maintenance history to prove that even though the car's 10 years old, it had a service every year, it had maintenance every year or every 2 years or whatever the case is. Tires were changed, these things were changed. But if the car's got a hell of a low mileage reading, but the service book is blank for 10 years, then it's questionable. You don't know.
And you say that a car that's got a high mileage but a comprehensive full maintenance history,
it's worth just as much as a car that's got low mileage with a comprehensive history as well.
But as long as it's got the
As
history.
long as it's got a proper
Okay, so the history
maintenance.
ties a
Yeah.
lot into the mileage.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Drivetrain configuration and engine. Again, in the ideal.
Yeah, in the ideal world, obviously the very special ones will have the, I mean, you get models that will be like, for example, a diesel engine, which is not very common in the classic.
Yeah.
People are not, they look for the petrol engines, they look for the bigger engines, the most powerful engines, the racing type of engines. So the engine definitely has an impact. You know?
Okay. And that would be engine and drivetrain configuration.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, when a person buys a classic car, they're looking to rekindle some memories sometimes. You know, they're looking to rekindle memories of their youth or whatever.
Like a feeling.
Like the feeling, yes, the emotion behind it. And things like having a rear-wheel drive, normally aspirated, manual gearbox car will be high up on the criteria for rekindling those memories. You know, so they won't choose an automatic one. If there's an automatic version of it, they won't. They want the manual. You know, they won't choose a 2-liter version when they want the 3-liter version.
So just as an overall criteria, not like specific to an individual, you'd say drivetrain configuration, manual, rear-wheel drive,
definitely has an
bigger
effect.
engine would be the ideal.
Correct. Yeah.
When you're looking at an investment
That's
point of view. And then, okay, we went on maintenance history, paint condition, interior condition, just original and in good condition.
Yeah, I mean, paint is a big thing. Even though you can redo the paint, but it's quite a pricey thing to get right.
So we've got paint at 3. Do you want to leave it at 3 or make it?
No, 3 is fine. I mean, it's in an ideal world, the paint must be perfect, but it's not a deal breaker most of the time.
Okay. Yeah. It's
if the paint if it needs a bit of attention here and there, most guys understand that the vehicle is probably 20-30 years old, and they're more lenient on the paint side of it, and they'll understand that. Listen, it's an older car, so it's got a nick or a ding or a scratch or whatever, and they're more accepting to it. But a car that does have better paint will get a better value.
Yeah, better original
value. Yeah.
Okay. And then I suppose number of previous owners ties into maintenance and mileage as well.
Yes. The number of owners doesn't really matter. What matters is how did those owners look after that car.
So that's maintenance.
So it could have had 10 super pedantic owners, and that's absolutely fine. Or it could have had one poor owner who never looked after the car correctly, and the car that's got 10 owners will hold more weight than.
So maintenance issue and number of previous owners both have ratings of 3. Do you think maintenance should have a higher rating than number of previous owners and mileage?
Again, because it's such an old car, buyers are quite lenient.
No, I'm saying in terms of even modern collectibles.
Yeah.
So across the board.
Yeah, look, I suppose you could separate that into a modern versus classic, because on the classic side of things, people are a bit more lenient. On the modern cars, they're not as lenient. They'd like the mileage to be fairly low.
Yeah.
Because nobody considers a fairly new car with high mileage a collectible classic or collectible modern classic. Then it's just a well-used sports car or whatever. So definitely, it's a bit of a flexible one there.
Okay. So suppose all of it is open to, a situation and open to the actual car you're examining.
Yeah.
But do you think that this criteria list or this 14 criteria is comprehensive of everything you would ever look at?
Yeah.
If someone presents you a car and says, look, do you want to buy this car? And you're like, okay, is it going to be a good investment? That this criteria list is
definitely
everything that you possibly need to
look at.
Definitely. And obviously in the order of, saying, okay, first how many were made?
Yes.
And then going through, if you want to determine if it's going to be an investment, doing it based off of this criteria list in the weighting of each one. Do you think that would be sufficient enough to, make
an informed decision? Yeah, definitely. If all the boxes are ticked there, then you're most likely buying something that's going to be a worthwhile investment, and definitely a collectible car.
Because as I see in most cases, cars are only recognized as collectible after they've already started appreciating.
Yes.
So you're never getting in before it's in most of the time.
Sometimes you can have foresight, like for example, certain cars you can see And that's another thing we tend to do as dealers and people involved in this is we keep an eye on the international market. And when the international prices start to climb in a certain car,
This is
the rest of the world is going to follow suit.
Okay.
Because, I mean, why would you sell a car for a whole lot less when
Yeah.
you can get X amount in America?
Exactly.
So, and you can sometimes you can, you can preempt these things and you can find one that's still priced at a normal price before it goes up. Yeah.
And which international market specifically do you look at generally? UK
So the big players with as far as with classic cars in the world is generally America, Australia, Japan, and the UK. Those are big players in this industry. There are multiple buyers in those countries looking for cars because their local markets are priced still quite high. And if they can find something in South Africa or in another country a whole lot cheaper, they're happy to buy.
Yeah. Especially because of their currencies are a lot stronger. So for them,
correct. So for them, it's cheaper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, before we conclude the interview, are there any final comments you'd like to add?
No, I think classic collectible car market is it's an odd one because it does fluctuate, but it's definitely a good one from the investment portfolio side. Good returns, good and fun. It's fun.
Exactly, that's the main thing. The emotional return is there.
It's very good. It's great. Overall, it's nice.
Gives you financial and emotional.
Emotional satisfaction, So that's nice.
Thank you for the interview.
My pleasure.